Welcome to the Bearded Outdoors podcast. I'm your host and co-owner of Bearded Outdoors, Reese Richards. This podcast is going to be just like you're sitting on your grandpa's tailgate. We're going to be talking about everything faith, beards, and the great outdoors. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. We really hope you enjoy and continue to do better and be better. God bless. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Bearded Outdoors podcast. I'm your host, Reese Richards. I am here with a guy that I've been trying to get on for a long time. This is Chris Hamm with HHA Sports. What's up, man?
Man, it's well, you said you had some nice weather down there. We're a little bit different. It's we had a little dusting of snow, and it's a little drizzly and rainy, and 34 right now. So,
man, yeah, we went fishing yesterday. It was about 81. Well, we went fishing Friday, and then yesterday we went out to Cedar Key, Florida, and we did a little bit of cast netting. I got some cast netted some mullet, made some smoked mullet dip last night, and then this morning, man, it's 10 o'clock here, and I'm sitting outside in shorts and a cut-off shirt, just running this.
Yeah, it's going to be a few months before we can do that up here in the North Woods, but that's all right.
Yes, sir. So, I was introduced, given your contact information a few months back, and man, ever since then, I knew about HHA. I knew about how great your products were. Honestly, it was one of those things that I'm an archery tech, but I'm not one of them archery techs where I know in depth about each company, each product. I go by, what my customers have told me. I haven't personally used a lot of products. I go by what my customers say and some reviews that I look at and stuff like that, and if a customer needs a site or something. But when I started really looking into Chris Hamm on top of HHA and your story and then HHA USA, it was something that I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop getting a hold of you. I couldn't stop wanting to do a podcast or even talking to you, because it's far and few between, when you look at companies in the outdoor industry that are around nowadays, and some that have lasted, if any, as long as you guys have. And it's just amazing, your story, from what I've heard from the other gentlemen, but I want to hear it first from you, just about, your life. And we're open on this podcast. You've heard it. It's just, we're here open, talking about faith, talking about our testimony. Everybody knows about myself and my wife and how Bearded Outdoors started, but this is an open mic for you to talk about HHA Sports, and then we can get into HHA USA.
Well, that sounds good to me. I've been looking forward to getting together on a podcast with you and sharing my story, one with you personally, and then just with your listeners. And I mean, my testimony is something that I've shared, multiple times here over the last, I guess it's been almost 7 years to the day that my life started to change. But I guess before we get into that, we can just talk about, HHA Sports and where that all started. My late father, will have passed. It'll be 3 years ago this coming July, but he started HHA in the mid '80s when I was a young man in grade school. I was 9 years old, 1984. That's when my dad started HHA Sports. So
Awesome.
He was a career businessman. He worked in manufacturing and picked up archery in the late 60s, early 70s when the compound bows started to come out. And so he was kind of one of those early innovators in the sport, and he was always tinkering, making stuff in his basement and showing it to guys at the local archery clubs. And after about 10 years or so, he just got tired of working for somebody else and thought, man, maybe I can make a living for my family in this archery thing and this passion that he's got. So there was a lot of hits and misses early on, and it wasn't until the till the mid '90s when the Optimizer site came out, which most of our customers know us for. That kind of gave us the shot in the arm to really push us into the mainstream. And gosh, that's been 26, 27 years now that product has been out. Time has surely flown, but yeah, we're still a family business, even though, like I said, even though Dad has passed away. My mom is still living. She's the president of the company. She doesn't have quite the role that she once did, but she's still an active participant in our business. And my brother and I essentially run HHA. He does all the engineering, and I do all the sales, marketing, and the financial side of things. So
yeah, they need to check out your YouTube channel. I think that's where the video was, where it talks about where you and your brother were sitting at the picnic table, and it talks about your story and stuff.
Yeah, we just put that video out at the first of the year. We shot it last fall, and had a lot of fun with that, because there's, especially I want to say the younger generation of archers that are out there. A lot of people, even some of the folks my age didn't really know who my dad was, because he had a heart attack back in 1996. And he only went to one ATA show after that. So, I mean, even though he was an integral part of our company up until 2015, 2016, when his health really started to deteriorate, he was kind of off the grid. He was never a social media guy. Right. He wasn't one about all, getting out there in front of the cameras and stuff. So he was really behind the scenes. So,
yeah, I mean, honestly, man, to tell you the truth, that's 90% of, why people want to support companies is the history, is the story, the reason. I mean, that's why I feel I give all glory to God. From our testimony of Bearded Outdoors, literally our company has a testimony, and if it wasn't for that, I don't feel Bearded Outdoors would be anything, because that's the most 90% of our supporters say, if you weren't as open as you are with your faith, and you weren't, if you were just a logo and a name, we probably wouldn't support you, because you'd just be like everybody else trying to make money, and they love everything about it. So I feel HHA is that story that everybody needs to hear on top of your testimony. I mean, that so much with my rambling, but yes, keep going with you.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that we just, it's been almost 3 years since he passed, and I got thinking last fall, I'm like, man, we really need to, obviously, he's going to live forever in our hearts and our minds, but a lot of our customers and our fan base didn't really know who he was. So we just felt compelled when we wanted to tell that story. 'Cause, I mean, we're one of the few, family owned, independently owned manufacturing companies making archery sites.
Thriving,
we make other products, but archery sites are primarily what we do. That are still made in America. I mean, there's not many of us left. I can count them on one hand.
Yeah.
And so that in and of itself is a big selling feature to people, because I mean, a lot of the majority of our customers are true blue flag waving Americans that want to buy product that are made on American soil. And I mean, we make our stuff right here in Wisconsin. We source all of our parts here in the Midwest, and awesome. We're very proud of that fact, and it's something that. We definitely wanted to get out there. So then that, on top of Dad's story and just how HHA has evolved over the years, and in spite of our success, we like to think that we're still the same humble bow hunting country boys that we were when we started this thing, almost 40 years ago. So
right. Yeah, that's something I actually just made a little video for you, doing an unboxing and everything that I'm going to be releasing. I uploaded it. I'm going to be releasing it probably by the end of the day today. And honestly, I did a lot of research on you before I even spoke to you on the phone, and there was the main reason why I didn't really. Most podcast hosts that I have, we'll have a conversation. All of them. We have a conversation before the podcast, whether it's a day or a few weeks, and just when we first started the podcast, the stories that we would talk about on the phone before the recording were so good, and they got into so deep, and it was so great. And this is why, if you haven't noticed, why I haven't really asked you and wanted to talk about your testimony yet, because of the reason that usually the first time you start talking about it, it ends up being the best time. So, first time with another person. So, so you got HHA Sports that has just, I mean, revolutionizing the game. You guys keep going. And then, yeah, being 100% American made and your warranty too. You know, both of those things are, a lot of people, they don't like standing behind their products because they don't realize they don't really 100% make those products in America and visually see those. And for someone that has that American made 100%, you know for a fact that your products are top notch. I mean, you open those sites and you hold that site in your hand, dude. That joker is solid. There is nothing wimpy about that. That site screams American made to me when I pick that thing up.
No, and we appreciate that. I mean, that's something that started from day one. I mean, you think back into the mid 80s, early 90s. I mean, there was no social media, there was no internet. So, I mean, we relied solely on
the product,
word of mouth, putting quality products out, putting them into dealers' hands, putting them into customers' hands. And I mean, that was the advertising. We didn't have the ability to go on YouTube and crank out a video or put up an Instagram post and instantly tell the world about our new products. It had to be done, you know, and it was very grassroots. And so even though we now have all of those other things that I spoke about, you know, the groundwork for and the foundation for HHA Sports was laid 40 years ago by my dad, by, you know, creating American made products that were locally sourced, that were bomb proof, that were bulletproof, and that, heaven forbid, something should go wrong. Hey, you either send that back, or, you know, in some cases, you know, some of the stuff back then, you know, it wasn't $150 bow sight. It might have been a $15 or $18 caliper release. Well, the big joke was, and I still hear stories to this day, my dad would just tell those customers, hey, throw it in the garbage. You'll have a new one in the mail in 2 days. And I mean, that bought us so much business over the years, and that philosophy has not changed.
Yeah.
And it never will.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like anything. Anybody can go on and be very hyped up and everything and say, this product's great, blah, 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 post it on YouTube, and people will go online, never seeing it, never feeling it, never nothing, and buy it. And that's what's great about, you know, and those products, obviously, with how social media is now, those products will go downhill quick. And that's what's great about, you know, being able to stand by something, and then being able to just, someone like myself, pull me in, not knowing, not the only words I've heard about HHA were looking through archery magazines or my Lancaster magazine, seeing HHA sites, or someone having an HHA site, or, you know, some of the influencer bigger companies seeing HHA flash across your screen when you're watching hunting shows. And then all of a sudden that pulled me into someone introducing me to you and was like, you need to talk to this gentleman. And I started doing some research and was like, this is, if I'm going to be involved with any company or help any company get, you know, at least get to my followers, because I know you've reached millions of people, but if I could do anything, this is the one company that I would want to be with. And this is a lifetime. I mean, I don't gain a lot of relationships with people in depth as you and I have been in the past few months. So, I'm in it for the long run, man. I just set my bow up, 3 or 4 days ago, and I shot my first 82-yard foregroup. And I shot out to about 50 where I normally max out at, and I was seeing my groups and I'm like, this is insane. So I just say, you know what? I walked down all the way down my driveway to 82 yards. Actually, I went to the end of my driveway, put my morel target down. I walked back to as far as I could go on my fence, and it was ranged at 82 yards. I turned that sight to 82 yards, and I grouped about 6 inches. And I was like, first time ever shooting past 50, and I grouped 4 arrows at 6 inches. And I was just like, this is awesome. Now, granted, you have to be able to put that stuff on, fine tune it, and level it out, and paper tune everything to get those distances. But it's solid. And I know every time I grab that bow that I'm not going to have to worry about going out of state and going to pick up my bow out of its case. And I guarantee I can do my normal 3 shots and be ready to go for the week for those out of state hunts. I don't have to worry about anything messing up. So It's definitely, I'm 100% with you on your products, man. And I want to get into, we heard about HHA Sports a little bit. Is there anything else you want to talk about with the actual brand and the products? I think the people kind of know that this is, y'all are the real deal. And if y'all haven't heard of HHA, which I'm sure you have, um, HHAsports.com and on Instagram at HHA Sports. And they also have a nonprofit, HHA USA. Let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah, and before we jump onto that, I guess just
Yeah.
let me just circle back around on the HHA sports
Okay,
side of things.
absolutely.
I mean, you talk about, reading your hunting magazines and seeing HHA in there. And I mean, one thing that we, like I say, in spite of our level of success, we try to maintain a pretty humble profile because that's just who we are and who we're built to be. But we, last year, or I guess it was just in January, we received for the 18th consecutive year the Bow Hunting World Reader's Choice Award for the top movable site in the industry. And I mean, that's something that we like to fly that flag because I mean that's not a bought and paid for. That's not because we put half page or full page ads in these magazines.
That's the
that is a
people.
consumer voted award for
100%.
18 years in a row that they look at us and they say, yeah, HHA is number one when it comes to adjustable sites. I mean, that's something that
That's awesome.
we're very proud of, but at the same time, it motivates us because we want to get 19, we want to get 20,
Yep.
we want to get 21, we want to keep that going, and so we continue to innovate, even though we've been around for 40 years. People might look at that and say, well, these guys are on their, they're in turn 4. They're what are they really doing? Well, we're still cranking out quality products that people want.
Oh, yeah.
And we've got a lot of great, allies in the industry that have helped us along the way as well. I mean, you look at what Hoyt has done in the last year or so with their Picatinny sites and what Matthews did this year with the bridge lock system. We're selling a ton of inline sights this year. We recently just partnered with UltraView with their scope.
I saw that.
So we've got an UltraView bracket now. So I mean, there's a lot of good stuff going on right now in 2022, and even some. I guess I'll put a little teaser out there for your listeners. Maybe we'll have to hop back on later in the summer, but we might have something else up our sleeve yet for 2022. So.
Awesome. Yeah, dude, I did notice the Reader's Choice Award in your 2022 catalog that you sent me. I was looking at that. I didn't realize that it was 18 consecutive years. That's pretty amazing. And you guys are humble. I mean, there's nothing boastful about anything you guys do. It's literally your products speak for themselves. The people get it in their hands and they're like, these are amazing products. And then someone like me goes and starts doing research and it's like, this is great. And the collaboration thing, I mean, that's what's amazing about social media. Your perspective on anything, if you wanted to be positive, you can throw that onto the social media aspect. There's so many people that knock social media and I don't want to be involved with that, but as a business standpoint, to tell you the truth, if it wasn't for social media, for a lot of companies, they wouldn't even be around, because that's a hard thing nowadays to try and get past. And the fact that you guys were before social media, thriving is great in its own. But these collaborations with different companies, and there's always going to be something bigger and better. There's always going to be something that you can improve on and do, and being, involved with these companies as easy as clicking a button and typing some words and being involved with other people and other companies. I mean, I don't see this ever going in an opposite direction. I mean, it's always going to be there. So
for sure. Yeah, no, it is. And I mean, but at the same time, like you said, you pull our stuff out of the package and you instantly know that it's quality. And unfortunately, one of the downfalls of social media is, and I just had a conversation with somebody about this on the phone this morning, it's very easy to look at something on a video or on a picture and go, oh man, that's going to be awesome. And then all of a sudden you get it and then the disappointment sets in. So, I mean,
yeah.
we've been fortunate enough, to obviously have been around pre when all that stuff started. So,
right.
Granted, we rely heavily upon social media and on our content creators to put out good quality content to represent our products for us. But just a cautionary tale, just because something looks good on a photo doesn't mean it's gonna look good when you get it in your hands and take it out in the woods. So.
Yep, exactly. All right. Um, so HHA USA, nonprofit. You guys started doing some archery tournaments and stuff that I'm hoping to get out to this year. Um, talk about how that started and what made you get so in depth into HHA USA.
So there's that's kind of a multi-layered conversation. So I guess we're going to start at it on the surface. You look at the HHA USA logo, and that was actually something that was created, boy, not quite 10 years ago. I'm going to say 7 or 8 years ago. We had started a military discount program thanks to our friends at Vortex down the road. And so we offer a 25% military discount to anyone that's active duty or a veteran of the military service, or also first responder and law enforcement, just as our means of saying thank you to them for what they do.
Right.
Because without those folks, we wouldn't have jobs. We wouldn't be able to sleep safely at night in our beds. So we're very thankful for all of them. So that started in I'm going to say 2014, 2015. And around that same time, I was introduced to the Honor Flight Network, which, if you're not familiar with Honor Flight, that is a nonprofit organization. There's about 120 chapters across the country, and they send veterans of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam to Washington, D.C. for the day to visit all the memorials that were built in their honor. And so I was introduced to that. We've been fortunate over the years to have quite a few, I'm going to call them, hunting celebrities, and then also athletes that have shot our product. One of those athletes was Jonathan Lukroy. He was a catcher for the Milwaukee Brewers. He and I became friends probably 7 or 8 years ago, and I read an article on him in our local paper that he had gone on this honor flight out of Milwaukee. So I texted him one night and asked him about it. He said it was one of the greatest things he had ever done. So I started looking into it in my area. We have a chapter about an hour from the house. I became a ground volunteer for them, and just instantly fell in love with everything that the organization stood for. And just seeing, it takes 150 to 200 volunteers every weekend to pull that flight off. And just to be part of something like that, and to see the smiles on the faces of those veterans when they come back to the airport and they get this huge welcome home from the friends and family. It was very moving. And so, so that was kind of, if you want to call that the next layer. Well, then, I was also introduced to some combat veterans that were wounded in combat, and then took place in the Department of Defense Warrior Games, which is put on by the government, by the Department of Defense. And archery was one of their sports that they do, adaptive sports. And so I flew out to West Point in 2016. I flew out to West Point on an invitation from one of our staff members at the time, who had competed in the games and was then the coach for the Army. And I will never forget this day. I was sitting in the bleachers watching a gentleman shoot a bow and arrow. He'd been blown up by an IED. So, I mean, his face was completely unrecognizable. He had no fingers, and yet he was shooting a bow and arrow at 20 meters with the assistance of a woman handing him one arrow at a time. And he was shooting better with his disability than I could probably shoot on my best day at 20 yards. And I just remember looking at the guys that I was with, and I'm like, because I knew he had PTSD, and I said, and seeing what the sport of archery had done for him, and then for these other gentlemen that invited us out, I said, man, we have to do something about this. There's something here. And that was something at that point. I guess we can start talking about my faith at that point too, because I was, God was working on me and working on my heart to get me to work with the veteran community. And that was something that, I'm not a service member. I'm a civilian. I've never put on a uniform in my life. Yeah. And I initially pushed that away. It didn't make sense to me. It's like, well, God, why do you want me to work with veterans? I'm not a veteran. It didn't make sense in my mind. Yeah. And so I pushed it away for probably the better part of a year. But then our military discount started to pick up steam, and I would have more email conversations with veterans and active military about, the benefits of archery in their life. And then just hearing all these other stories. And there was 4 or 5 other instances that God was very plainly telling me, no, I want you in this space.
He kept it on your heart.
I've put you here for a reason. You are going to work with veterans. And so, driving home from the airport one night, I was coming home about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And that day I had met, that morning I had met a gentleman that was on the board of directors for a local archery club where the honor flight took off. And didn't really think anything of it. We just exchanged pleasantries and went about our jobs for the day. Well, then that evening, I met a civilian that owned a tavern up here in Wisconsin, and he had invited in and paid to have an 80s hair band come through and play. And they put on a benefit and raised like $5,000 or $6,000 for honor flight and gave all the money back to them. And that gentleman just randomly shared that story with me that night before the flight came in. And so I'm processing my day and everything that happened, and driving home, I thought, well,
Boom.
man, I've got a really, really successful archery business.
I can do something here. Yeah.
How can I leverage that to raise money for this cause that I love so much? And so I started making a few phone calls, and instead of selfishly wanting to get, a new pair of lacrosse boots for myself or a new Matthews bow or whatever, I said, hey, I'm going to be putting on some archery shoots this summer. Would you consider sending some items in for donations so we could put them out on silent auction and raise some money for our veterans? And it was a resounding yes. Everybody that I called, I mean, it was like, yeah, where do I send it? 2 or 3 days later, I'd have a box on our receiving dock of donations. And so
that's great.
So that was back in 2017 is when that started. So, and at that point, HHA USA was still simply our military discount.
Gotcha.
I was working as a volunteer for the Never Forgotten Honor Flight, just working under their umbrella. And we did 3 shoots in 2017, and we raised just under $15,000 in 3 weekends.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
And then did those same 3 shoots in 2018, and then we almost doubled our monies. I think it was like 28 or 29,000 that we raised in 2018. We added a 4th shoot in 2019, and I think we raised just over $40,000. I mean, in 3 years' time, we did 10 shoots and raised around $90,000 for our local honor flight.
It gives you goosebumps, man, to think of like, oh, I used to call them goosebumps, and then I heard the word holy bumps one day, and I was like, okay, or glory bumps, and I was like, okay, glory bumps from now on. But that's the spirit inside of you when those things happen. I'm a firm believer in that feeling, and I just got that feeling. That's the way the Lord works, man. That truly is. It's something that he keeps it on your mind, and it might come off of your mind for a week or so because your life's work is taking over, and then next thing you know, you're back on track, and those things instantly, like you can tell those things that are instantly back on your mind that the Lord is pushing you to do somehow or some way. And that the Lord's been pushing Amber and I with Bearded Outdoors, because we make all of our own all natural handcrafted beard products, and we sell it on our website, and we have a 15% discount. But I tell you what, for the past year or so, I haven't ever told anybody this, but for the past year or so, we've been thinking about starting a nonprofit that has to do with when, man, a lot of people are going to hear this. Anyway, so basically it's we want to start a nonprofit that has to do with beard product boxes, when it called Freedom Beard. So when military come out of the military, when soldiers come out of the military, 90% of them want to start growing a beard. So we thought about doing some kind of a donation setup where people can voluntarily buy a freedom box for their soldier, for their vet, that we will then send to that person when they come out, to allow them to have all natural beard products so they can actually grow a healthy, especially some guys with PTSD, they don't even want to deal with the beard because of, some people have dry skin with it and this and that if you don't use any products. So our products will help them to have a comfortable, more enjoyable time growing their freedom beard.
Very cool.
So that's something
Very
that
cool.
my wife and I had in our minds. We've never ever told one individual about this, and I'm, I guess, speaking about it now. And I think talking to you just sparked that, what I was talking about.
Well, now you told the world about it. God's timing, right?
I think this is something that we need to do. But okay, let's go back to you. So it blows my mind because I'm sitting here talking about how God brings things into your life. Then you deal with life's work and you do all this, and then it comes back and it comes back every week or every month. You'll get this. Okay, we need to do this, and you never do it. And talking to you right now about HHA USA is you're making a difference just by speaking to me on my podcast. So let's continue with HHA USA.
So, so that brings us up to basically 2019. And I mean, we had done, like I said, we had done 10 shoots primarily around central Wisconsin at that point. But the more of these we did, it started to slowly build a following, and we'd be seeing the same faces coming and then new faces coming from further away. And so I would have people ask us, hey, well, can you do one of these shoots in our area? And it might be 2-3 hours from where we live. And it's like, well, and right now I don't really have the latitude to do that because I don't have my own organization. I'm just working as a volunteer for somebody else. And so,
Right.
And Honor Flight is a great organization. I mean, we were giving 100% of the profits or the proceeds to them, but this PTSD thing was also playing God was also putting that on my heart. So it's like, man, if I had my own organization, I could then mobilize the funds how God chose me to do it. Not that Honor Flight was a bad deal, but it would allow us to have an impact with other organizations outside of Honor Flight. Should I have my own organization? So I have a good friend here in town that, an hour from the house here, that's a pastor, and he and I got talking one day, and it was like, well, man, you've got your nonprofit in HHA USA, you've got it. You're halfway there,
Right.
And it just made sense because at that point we had built up almost 40 years worth of goodwill on the for-profit side, or 35 years. So why not use that HHA USA name, to bring attention and put a spotlight on that veteran and now the first responder community. So,
Right.
So October of 2019, we got our 501c3.
Okay.
Obviously COVID hit in 2020, but we were still able to put on 8 shoots. We did everything outside. We didn't do any indoor shoots. So we had 8
Right.
shoots. We did 8 shoots again last year. This year we've gone down to 6. A couple of the shoots that we were doing, it was a great course, but unfortunately it was a holiday weekend, and nobody at HHA USA gets paid for any of this stuff. It's all volunteer. And so, our volunteers love the cause. They're passionate about it, but at the same time, they love their families.
Correct.
And we basically gave up, the beginning and the end of our summer for this event. So we've gone down to 6 events, but then we're also adding a banquet. HHA Sports has been partnered with Whitetails Unlimited for, probably going on 15 years. Just a great partner of ours. Awesome. They actually donate a Matthews bow to every one of our shoots.
Great.
And when I was talking with my field director there, I told him I'd always wanted to have a banquet for HHA USA, and he says, "Well, we can do that. We'll basically put on the banquet, and you guys will get half the money. All I need is 10 or 12 volunteers." So that was a no-brainer. All I had to do was basically give up, 4 or 5 hours one night on a Thursday night coming up here in August, and grab 10 or 12 of my closest friends to help out with this. So I think our financial impact is probably going to be the same as it was, if not higher than it was last year, with doing one less event. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's sweet about, because so what people don't realize is people will see big companies and they'll be like, oh, I'm not even going to get involved, or they're already handling that section, or they're already the top notch or top dog. But people don't realize, like, I am a very, very small company compared to you, but I have some following that might not know about you, might not know about your cause, might not know about HHA USA, and people don't realize, just like what you were talking about the other nonprofit. Your mind was like, oh, they're already doing that, blah blah blah. But the reality is, you have your following, you have your people that God has brought you for your company, that you can now introduce in that field through your nonprofit, which introduces their nonprofit. You talking about their nonprofit is an impact. And it's just, if everybody would have that mindset of, we're all in this together, how can I help? Then this world would be amazing. I mean, the hunting industry, I feel, is 80% of that, but there's still that other 20% that everybody's about me, and everybody's about, I want to stay like this. Why would I, promote this company that's the same as me? Well, the reality is, you'll see Bearded Outdoors promoting, similar faith-driven apparel companies, and we do the same exact thing. You know why? Because we're in it together. We have the same mindset. We're all trying to bring, the word of the Lord into the outdoor industry more and more every single day, and make people realize that, the breath that God gives you is what allows you to make these moves, to make these companies, to make these sites, to make these, connections in the outdoor industry. None of this would be possible if God didn't give you that first breath when you woke up. And the thing is, we get so complacent about that breath that he gives us that a lot of us won't even talk or even read the Bible or talk to God 20, 30 minutes after you wake up. You're doing all these other things, and next thing you know, it's like, man, how many breaths did I just have that God gave me, that God blessed me with, and now I'm talking to him and thanking him for them. So
no, that's a great perspective. I mean, even as a born again Christian for the last 6 years, I mean, I get off on on Chris's path too often. I mean, I'm a big fan of the YouVersion Bible app. So I mean, before my feet ever hit the ground in the morning, I've got 2 different groups of guys that I do across the country.
Awesome.
That I do Bible apps with before I ever hit the shower, before I ever turn my light on. But then all of a sudden the day starts. I'm in the shower, I'm eating breakfast, I'm up to my desk, and before I know it, it's 10 o'clock, and I haven't. Some days I forget about God for 6 or 8 hours, and I feel guilty about it. So I've actually set up reminders in my phone. If there's a certain Bible verse that has been on my heart,
Right.
for the last 6 months or 2 weeks, I have that reminder in my phone at 10:30 every day, just to go back and read that, because it forces me to unplug from my Post-it notes and from the chaos of my day and say, okay, thank you, Lord. Thank you for giving me those breaths for the last 4 or 5 hours.
Right.
And it just refocuses me.
Yeah. We definitely lose our vision, and we definitely get complacent with all that stuff, but guess what? The growth of being a Christian and being a Jesus follower, that is part of the growing process, is knowing what you are and aren't doing, and realizing, the Lord sees you, realizing that, oh, he is setting a reminder to put myself in front of his needs and this and that. So that's definitely, it does have a guilt feeling that comes on top of it, but that guilt feeling turns that into, what the Lord wants from us and for us. So
yeah, and I would correct you on that. And I mean, guilt is something that comes from the enemy. So I would go as far as to say that it's the Holy Spirit reminding you, hey, come back to me, because guilt is something that is from the devil, and that's not anything that we want.
Right.
Because then we're gonna dwell on the fact that, oh man, I went 6 hours and I forgot about reconnecting. Well, that plug back in the minute that nudge happens. Just plug back in, and the longer that we're in our walk, the more. It's just like exercising or shooting a bow or anything else. The more that we do it, the better that we get at it. We're never going to be perfect, but we know our tendencies, and we're always going to get off track. Every day we're going to get off track. We sin every day, but the further into our walk we get, the quicker that we get back on track, and we recognize that.
Yeah, it's like that old comedian, picture, and those old skits they used to do with the devil on one shoulder and God on your other shoulder. That's all reality. That's real life. I mean, that's actually, it's supposed to be a funny skit, but the reality of it is that's a good perspective to look at it, because there's always one in one ear and one in the other, in a sense. The devil's always trying to get inside of you, and the Spirit's always trying to tell you to come back. And that's a fight that people think, when you become a Christian, that, oh, it's all over with, everything's good, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, it's actually worse. The devil tries to get, when he sees you doing good, that's when he tries to get you the most. And that's why people don't realize, like, praise those struggles. Let God know that you appreciate what you're going through, because then he'll fight even harder when the devil tries to get in once you hit those mountain peaks. That's there's always going to be valleys, and there's always going to be mountains, and you just have to always be preparing yourself, whether you're in your down season or your up season, and that goes with perspective too. It's all about how your mind thinks. Your body can tell you, and your human mind can tell you that this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. But if you change that perspective around to what good is out of it, and next thing I'm with a nonprofit called 10 Can Christian Adventure Network, and we do youth hunts and veteran hunts and stuff. And their slogan this year was "Hunt the Good," and that's exactly what it is. Everything you do, everything you might sit out in the woods expecting to get on a huge buck, and you don't get on a huge buck. Well, one person might be thinking in their mind after the hunt, like, "Man, that was so unsuccessful. We didn't even see a deer." But that other person could have you change that perspective around to, "Man, it was a beautiful day. We heard God's creation come alive. It was such a beautiful sit." And that's hunting the good to me. Is like that's exactly how that is, changing that perspective around everything that happens. There is a reason, and you need to make that reason, that's God's plan, as long as you're putting him first for your life. So
Yeah, which, like I said, it is a constant struggle for as much as we get into the word. And I mean, I'll take that one step further. I mean, it is so important, and has been so important for me in my walk to have accountability to other brothers in Christ.
mm-hmm.
Like I said, I do my U version every morning, and I mean, one of my best friends on the planet lives in Southern California. I've met him face to face once, but we've been able to connect through our common love of the Lord.
Yes.
And for the last, I think it started during COVID. We started doing devotionals, and then it graduated to a weekly phone call. Now we do a Zoom call once a week.
That's
but
great.
I mean, we're always praying for each other, lifting each other up, sending each other encouragement. I mean, that is huge, because we are not meant to do life alone.
Right.
We just aren't. We're supposed to be in community with other believers. The Bible calls us to that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just so important. It has been in my life, and I would encourage any of your listeners that are out there that are believers. If you're not in community with other brothers in Christ, you need to make that happen, because
100%.
One of my favorite verses in the entire Bible is Proverbs 27:17, and that's iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens the next. I mean,
Yep.
Truer words have never been spoken.
Yep, that popped up on my verse of the day. 2 days ago, yesterday,
Yep.
and that's definitely 100% true, man. That's why sometimes I get so personal with everybody, and I'll throw my personal cell phone number out there and this and that, and I'm like, people are like, "Man, you're putting your personal information out there." It's like, dude, what? You're gonna be in fear your whole life, not giving people your number to call you right away if they need anything, because you're afraid they're gonna steal your identity through your cell phone. Like, all those things, fear is a liar, So that's, I want people. I don't want someone to be in a situation, know me, and not know my phone number, or not know an email, or not know a way to get a hold of me. And that's, having this team of 150 people on our team all over the US, that's what I try to instill in them, saying prayers about, "Lord, please bring people that are lost towards us." And we'll try, please put the correct words in the correct ways to bring these people closer to you. And it's about building that community, like you said. And it's what's necessary nowadays. We all have to come together, and we all have to see what the Lord's trying to do, and just keep being better and better every day. I mean, that 1% every day is all I feel that you need to focus on, in a sense of growth. 1% is better than 0. So I think that 1% growing every day is a very good mindset to have.
No, I agree 100%. Like I said, through staying in the Word, and then devotionals. I'm a big reader too, so I'm actually just waiting on a shipment of books to come from Christian Books today. Paul, I don't know if you're familiar with Paul David Tripp or not, but he is one of my favorite writers in the Christian space. He just is. Everybody's got their own writing style that they like, and his just seems to appeal to me. But I did several devotionals on YouVersion of his, and I just went through one a couple weeks ago with a friend of mine and a brother in Christ who's actually a veteran.
Awesome.
We absolutely just both, I mean, it was hands down one of the best devotionals I think that I've ever done. And so many of the ones that are on YouVersion are written off of books, and this one was. And so I told my wife, I was like, man, I gotta get this book. So I ordered it up, and that should be hitting my door anytime now. So
Awesome. So Is there anything with HHA USA? I know this is hard to say because if anybody asks me, is there anything else at Beard Outdoors you want to talk about? I can go on, I mean, for hours. So anything specific with HHA that you haven't reached that you wanted, my listeners to know? I mean, another main reason why I'm so happy to be partnered with you guys and talk to you on the phone a lot is HHA Sports is awesome. You guys have great products, but then throwing HHA USA into this perspective, veterans mixed with, showing our faith and showing how great Jesus is. It's just, it's what every company should be about to me. I mean, that putting the Lord first in what we're doing is the whole reason why we're doing it. And the whole reason why our companies are even around is because of God and because of those breasts that we were talking about. So is there anything with HHA USA that you want to speak about other than what you've already spoke about?
Yeah, I mean, I know we talked a lot about the formation of it, but I mean, a lot of people might be questioning, well, what is it? How does it function? What does it do? And so, I mean,
Right.
we put on 6 3D archery shoots in Wisconsin. That's what we're doing this year. And for anybody that's ever been to Whitetails Unlimited, Rocky Mountain Elk, Ducks Unlimited, Pheasants Forever, any kind of a banquet like that, there's always a big auction there. And so that's kind of what sets our 3D shoots apart from others, is that it's a combination archery shoot fundraiser. So, you go on our website under our sponsor page, and I think at last I counted, it was over 80. We have over 80 product sponsors that donate us optics, bows, camo apparel, broadheads, releases, arrows, you name it.
That's awesome.
And so we'll have 40 to 50 silent auction items set up at each one of our shoots. And that's where, we obviously, we split some of the door money with the clubs, because the clubs have to keep their lights on. So,
Yep.
But then we make a good percentage of our monies off of our silent auction. And so that's kind of how our events function. And a lot of people ask, well, do you do any events outside of the state of Wisconsin? As of right now, no, as much as I would love to.
Right.
As one of the owners of HHA, I've got a business owner never is off the clock, and especially with emails on my phone. I mean, I'm working from 7 to 4:30, Monday through Friday, but then I'm still working around that. And then I'm also the founder and the, of HHA USA. So I've got this nonprofit that I run along with my volunteers. So as of 2022, we don't have any events outside the state of Wisconsin.
Right.
For any of your listeners that are archers that are familiar with the Reinhardt R100, that's a traveling 3D archery shoot that I think they've got 17 or 18 stops across the country this year.
Yeah.
We partnered up with them at the beginning of last year, and they agreed to put out a 10 target. It's all whitetails. It's called Whitetails for Warriors, but they put out a 10 target course at every one of their stops. It's $10 to shoot that.
Nice.
And then all of those monies will come back to HHA USA at the end of the year. So,
good deal.
Even though we're not doing shoots beyond state lines yet,
there still works.
Any one of those R100s you go to, you can shoot that Whitetails for Warriors course. And then, of course, we have a, like all nonprofits or most nonprofits, we have a donation button on our website as well, so people can send funds that way.
Awesome. And that's HHAUSA.org. If anybody's interested right now in any of the events, any of the opportunities, or just a simple donation, HHAUSA.org. And after this podcast, I'll talk to you about possibly if you're interested in any, different kind of products, as in, some beard products or packages like that being donated to you for any of those, auctions or anything. We'd be happy to do that. That'd be great. Anything we can do to help, and that. So
excellent. And then for people on the HHA Sports side, if you go on our website there, if you look at our apparel, any of the HHA USA branded stuff, so t-shirts, jerseys, hats, we've got a Big Frig tumbler, we have a challenge coin, any of that stuff, the profits from all of the sales of those HHA USA items also come back to HHA USA off the HHA Sports website. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for people to support, even if they can't come to Wisconsin. And I would throw that out to any of your listeners. I mean, I hope that you and your wife can make it up this year, but we always love seeing, every year we go to these shoots, it seems like the family grows. It's a family reunion.
Yeah.
And there's people coming from out of state. I mean, my friend Al's coming from California. He got introduced. You want to talk about a God thing? He's on the pro staff for Badlands, has been for years. Well, one of their other staffers is an amputee that is a Navy veteran. They met in a hunting camp in, I believe it was Nebraska last November. And Aaron lives in Virginia Beach, so he is actually flying in for one of our shoots as well. So we literally have people coming from coast to coast for our HHA USA shoots. So last year we had a group of guys out of Tennessee, the Veteran Archery Project. They drove up 10 hours one way, 7 of them loaded up in 2 pickup trucks. They drove up here and shot bows and arrows with us for the weekend. I mean, it was awesome. So I mean, and that's really what sets our events apart from other archery events is that, you know, it's heavy to the civilian side, but there's getting to be more and more veterans showing up at these shoots.
Right.
And it's just awesome to see that community that is building there and the friendships that are building and the life change that is happening as a result of it. It's very rewarding, and it's humbling to be just one spoke in a much bigger wheel, you know, with this movement of archery and the veteran and first responder community coming together.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we have some team members over around that area that we introduced our partnership to our team and stuff, and then I'm gonna introduce them more once I release this podcast about, you know, encouraging them to go to HHAUSA.org and looking into your shoots over there, because I mean those are some guys and girls that they enter, you know, they've done the total archery and this and that, and they enter stuff. So I think they would be 100% on board with, you know, we could possibly all meet up, you know, at one of your events, and now, you know, you're doing you don't realize sometimes, you know, that the events that you put on, what it does for others, you know, away from the veterans, but just in general, people meeting and knowing and connecting and, you know, fellowshipping, and like you're saying, your friend in California, and then he knows this guy in Virginia Beach, and so now everybody's coming together all for the same cause, and that is great, and that's humbling to know. I think that's why I think Bearded Outdoors USA needs take that one step further, kind of like how you were slowly getting involved with nonprofit stuff, and then next thing you know, you found how you can help, and now you're building on top of that. And that is definitely, I want you to know right now that is 100% true encouragement for my wife and I to get, you know, to make our difference. I feel as starting a nonprofit. I think that's something that we need to. I think that's more important than anything, to tell you the truth right now. So I think we might throw that priority level up to number 1 and focus on that. We're focusing on a Team Bearded Outdoors app that we're creating right now that's going to have Bible studies involved with the app. It's going to be like a membership app that you can come on. We're going to have Bible studies that we're going to do, and we're going to do all kinds of other meetups and virtual meetups and stuff, and just trying to put the Lord more and more and more at the forefront of, you know, our progress in this life. So that's great, man. I really appreciate all that stuff that you're getting involved in, and that you're able to open your mindset up to the Lord and how he's guiding you towards all of these things, and to see your faith grow. And you talk about it. You know, we haven't even spoke about, you know, how you came about living that, you know, 100% Jesus first mindset. Did you want to get into that?
Absolutely. No, I'm excited to get to that part of it. Cause I mean, awesome. I was born and raised in a Catholic home. I mean, I got, you know, baptized as an infant and had first communion and confirmation and all that stuff. But once I got out of high school, I really strayed away from that weekly going to church. And even though I was, you know, I didn't go to Catholic school, I went to public schools, but I went to catechism once a week. But I mean, I always believed in God, but I never had a relationship with Jesus. Right. And that is 2 completely different things.
Mm-hmm. I was in the same boat. I was born and raised Catholic, actually in a Catholic town. Like that's what you did. You went to Catholic church. You got, you know, you went to catechism. That's what you did. Like it was like I don't want to say a cult, but it was like that whole town we had a Catholic church, and that's like everybody did that. That's so I was in the same boat as you with that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, like I said, and I don't think I shared this at the beginning of the podcast, but I mean, my dad started HHA Sports in 1984. It is the only job that I've ever had. So I'm 46. I'll be 47 in May. But I mean, I've never had to fill out a job
Application.
I've never had a job application. I've never done an interview other than mock interviews when I was in high school and college.
Wow.
This is the only job I've ever had, so very, very blessed. I went to a 2-year tech college, and I remember sitting down with my instructor. She was my core instructor that I had for probably 7 or 8 classes over the 2-year time I was there. And she knew I was going to work for my dad, and she just said, give me a list. What are the 5 things that you want to accomplish in the next handful of years once you get into working full time? And I said, well, I was still living at home. I was 21 years old. I said, I want to buy a truck. I want to build a house. I want to get married, and I want to make a bunch of money. And that was my Post-it note. And that would have been 1996. By 2001, in 5 years, I had crossed all those things off. Wow. And I thought that was my recipe for happiness.
Right.
And for a couple of years it was. I was living in a really good space in the early 2000s. And I didn't start drinking alcohol until I was 22 or 23. And I won't get too far into the weeds on this, but I mean, I wasn't the big, 3-sport athlete in high school. I was a basketball guy, but I was more concerned about working and hunting than I was applying myself to playing basketball. So I got cut. I was the last guy to get cut going into high school, the first year of high school. And at that point, then I kind of became just one of the social outcasts.
Yeah.
I didn't really have a group that I fit into. And so I never felt popular in high school. And that stuff didn't really start happening until later, once I got out into the travel space with HHA and going to the ATA show, going to all these trade shows and seeing our popularity grow. And I unjustly took a lot of credit for that because, well, I'm the face of the company. This has to be because of me. And so my ego was building.
Yeah.
And my popularity was growing, or so I thought. And people liked me. And so, but I thought I also fell into the trap of, well, for people to like me, that means that once the show's done at 6 o'clock, I have to go out and entertain a bunch of people and act like a fool and drink and carry on and stay out till 2 or 3 in the morning. Well, ultimately that led to the end of my first marriage, in 2010. And at that point I went down a very dark path of drinking, womanizing. I was not a good person. And most of the people in the archery space didn't know that. I mean, they would see me for a handful of weekends out of the year, and then I was home living in Wisconsin acting like a fool for 2 years. So it was just it kind of went under the radar. But God knew what I was doing.
100%.
And had I stayed on that path, I would have either been in the ground or in jail.
Yeah.
In December of 2011, I met a woman that changed my life, and I 100% believe that God put her into my life to save me, not only in this life but in the next.
I feel the same way with you on that, man. Them holy bumps, they hit me hard too. Let's just say that's it.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, so she was born and raised in a Christian home. I mean, her father is a Vietnam vet. He drank up until he was 27, and I believe it was on Christmas Day of when he was 27 years old. He was home from Vietnam at that point, and just decided he was done with drinking, and ended up getting saved shortly after that. And I mean, he and my mother-in-law, and I didn't know this until about 6 months before I got married. I got married in 2017 to my wife, Holly. And the 3 of them were actively praying for me and my salvation the entire time that her and I were dating. And I didn't know that. And I still get choked up when I talk about that. 'Cause I mean, people tell you that prayer doesn't work. I will straight up call you a liar because it worked in my life. 'Cause I shouldn't be here, but by all accounts, I should not be here, but God had another plan for me. And so it took me at least I'll be 7 years sober in June.
That's awesome. That's
I
awesome.
I don't judge people that drink. I don't look down my nose
Yep.
towards people that drink. I just know that it's something that for me, it doesn't mix with who I am. It's not good for me.
That's 100% myself. My wife is same thing. We met in college. Everybody knows the story from the first episode, but this it's I don't want to say it's crazy because God's we shouldn't expect this to be crazy stuff, but yes, it's the same thing with myself, man. I was going down a crazy path. My wife stopped drinking. She started praying for me about change, and it it was the same similar stories, let's just say. And the fact that we both grew up Catholic, the fact that, you know, our wives in a sense, you know, were the main reasons for, you know, their prayers. Were all we had to do is want that change. And as soon as we want that change and we start, you know, showing the Lord that we want that change, all of this, dude, it's so crazy. This could be a whole nother podcast on how
For sure. Yeah, we could do a part 2 on this one. Yeah.
it truly is absolutely crazy. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it was 7 years ago where I had actually, my sales manager at the time, I had hired him, and he and I went to, before he ever set foot in Wisconsin, to start doing his job. I'm a big NASCAR fan, and at the time I had connections, or still do have connections, with the Duck Dynasty guys and the Buck Commander guys, and so we flew down to Texas for a NASCAR race, and for 3 nights just got drunk beyond, you know, just acted like fools. I never, you know, I texted Holly a couple times, but I never called her. I'm ashamed to even admit this, but I acted like a complete fool, and it was a culmination of what the last 5 or 6 years of my life had been. I was getting pulled in 2 different directions. I was trying to be the old version of myself that I thought everybody loved, that was this popular, fun, stay out till 2 a.m. guy.
Right. Yep.
And yet I had this amazing woman in my life that was completely different, that I knew was a Christ follower, and God was, you know, I was walking on a tightrope, and I had to make a decision. What am I going to do? Am I going to, if I was going to stay the old version of myself, I knew that she was no longer going to be an option. 1, because I knew she would leave, and 2, because I knew that she deserved better than that. And so I finally just came home and I said, I can't keep doing this anymore. I want to start going to church with you.
Yeah.
And so that Sunday, we walked into the church that her father was an elder on when it started, you know, 30 plus years before that. And music had always been a big part of my life. And so I was used to the Catholic Church. And for anybody that's ever been there, it is what it is.
Yeah.
The church that she belonged to was an Assembly of God church. So we get in there, you know, we sit down, the service starts, all of a sudden everybody get on your feet, and the worship band comes out, and I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
You know? But I was drawn in. So God was using my love of music to draw me closer to him. And so I started going to church with her. And every Sunday it was like the word was specifically for me. I mean, everybody's heard this, that's been a believer. You know, you feel like the pastor is speaking specifically to you. Well, that's how it felt like to me for a good part of those first 6 months that I was going. And I mean, I don't have a born on date. I can't say, you know, it was January 3rd of such and such, but I know it was sometime in the summer. It still took me almost a year to completely give my life to Christ. But I'll never forget driving to her house one day. And at that point I was starting to listen to Christian radio, and a song by the name of Chainbreaker by a guy by the name of Zach Williams came on the radio. And I'm like, what is this? And I told her about it. Yeah. And I mean, anybody that knows about Zach and his testimony, I mean, he was a drinker, he was a partier, and he was leading a very bad life, and dedicated his life to the Lord, and is on a completely different path now. So I mean, that song really resonated with me. And so, you know, from the conversation we talked about earlier with how the veteran stuff was getting put on my heart, I think right around that same time, 2015, 2016, we have an organization in town called the Neighborhood Table, and it's an outreach where they put on free meals for people that are less fortunate. I think it's every Tuesday. I'm sorry, it's the last 2 Tuesdays and every Thursday of the month. This was pre-COVID, but and different organizations would sponsor those meals, and our church was one of them. And she said, "Hey, do you want to come and help me at this meal?" It would require 12 to 15 people from our church to help put this meal on for 150 to 200 people in our community that needed a hot meal that evening. And I'm like, sure, I'll give it a try. Well, I will never forget the first time that I served a plate of food to somebody.
Right.
It was a heart change instantly when you are serving somebody else.
Right.
And that was just, I mean, there's so, I could probably write a book on my transformation and all the different things that God did to my life and to my heart to get me to serve him. But I mean, that was really a big stepping stone in me serving other people and not serving myself anymore.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the Robertsons thing, we're family friends with Zach Dasher and Gordon Dasher. Gordon Dasher baptized my wife and I in front of Phil and Kay's house in the river, and that was the first time. It was the 4th of July, and it was the first time that we stayed that weekend there, and that was the first time that we ever were at a gathering of more than 10 people where there wasn't drinking involved, but the personalities and the positivity and the happiness and the funniness was around. And I never knew anything about that growing up outside of Detroit. Like, going out to dinner meant wherever my parents were going to meet their friends at the bar, that's going out to dinner. There was no let's go sit at Applebee's and pray before a meal and sit down and like a nice family and have a dinner. Like, that was, drinking was just the part of life where we grew up. And when I went to that 4th of July party that they had, and it changed my perspective. I still continued to drink on the weekends and do all of those things, but that was my first eye opener of, man, you don't really have to go and get a 12-pack before you go to a party. You don't, it's such a crazy life change, and it's super hard to explain in a sense that people that have never experienced that would be able to understand, unless you gain that relationship with God, because it truly is. When I say it's crazy and when I say it's hard to understand, and I you and I try to explain something but the words aren't coming out, it's because it's nothing short of miracles. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why we can't explain it. Something that's not explainable to me is God. So
for sure,
it's wild, man, when you're mentioning and you're talking and I'm sitting here in my head like, wow, same as me. Wow, pretty close. Wow. That, like, and how many other people, if you're listening and your testimony is similar to ours, that this is how things, have occurred, I just want you to know that that's God. That's the Spirit. That's the Spirit putting these things inside of you and letting you know that everything's better and everything's okay, and just keep going and keep pushing. That encouragement and that hope, and knowing that God has that grace. No matter what you do, no matter what you have done, God's grace is always going to be there waiting for you to accept him into your hearts. And it's wild, man. It really is, to think of what you just said, and our wives and the Catholic thing. And my buddy and I went out to NWTF in Nashville this year, and when my wife and I used to, I wouldn't say party, but when the wife and I used to go have some drinks and listen to live bands and all that stuff, that was our fun, so to speak. And when we would see posts about NWTF Nashville every year, we always were like, we want to go. Well, did we want to go for the event, or did we want to go because all of these people in the industry were out, partying and having a good time, and we looked at that as, oh, that's going to be fun? Well, God humbled us quick. My buddy bought some tickets to NWTF, bought a hotel. He reached out to me. This was after I got laid off of my full-time job. And he's like, hey, man, I know you guys are down right now. You don't have any income coming in. He goes, I want you to hop in my truck and we're going to NWTF Nashville. Well, you know how this feeling is. That feeling of you're going to a bunch of partying and this is going to be a big test of, not partying. Well, he wasn't a partier either. So this transitioned into knowing in my mind what NWTF Nashville was about, all of a sudden to actually being involved with NWTF Nashville and seeing what was needed to be seen of that event, let alone what my mind of drinking and partying saw of that event. Next thing you know, man, we're filming content all through that event, meeting hundreds of people that knew me that I didn't even would have had a clue that knew who I was, fellowshipping with people, going back to the hotel, not going out, not going and drinking, not doing any of that stuff. And I came home with a completely different perspective of that event. And it's crazy. It really is. That's one event that I could tell people, it's not all about turkeys. Everybody in the outdoor industry goes to that event, and that's a really cool event to be able to go. And you see, popular people just walking around with their families, and this isn't one of those, one or two big outdoor industry guys getting paid to walk through this place for an hour. This is where, a lot of these guys go and hang out. And, it was definitely a great opportunity and stuff. And man, that's wild. We'll have to have another podcast talking about our testimonies and our faith more in depth. I wanted you to come on to be able to talk about HHA USA, HHA Sports. Just thank you so much for our, opening your ears to listen to me and be able to see, what we can bring to the table, anything that we can do to help your organization out, and representing your company and your products. My wife and I are super happy about that, and just being that humbling, arm open guy. I know how busy you are. You've taken my texts and you've taken my calls, and we've spoke, and we were finally able to line up some times for this podcast, and I think it was absolutely great. Are there you want to go in depth even further on any of that?
I want to share one final story with you. When you brought up the thing about NWTF, I think this will be an encouraging story for your listeners, and just how, if there's anybody that's on the fence, maybe that has been leading a life like you used to lead when you were in college, or like I was up until the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, don't think that you are too lost or too broken or you're beyond repair, or that God can't use you, because that is a lie. Mm-hmm. And I mean, huge Zach Williams fan. I've seen Zach 3 or 4 times in concert, and one of the things that he says is that God will take the biggest mess and turn it into the biggest message. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I mean, that is powerful. And so I think 2000, so I'll be 7 years sober in June. So I want to say 2017 was my first year going to ATA as a sober guy that wasn't going to drink. And I mean, you talk about a 180, because I mean, other than that, if it was a 4-night show, you can guarantee you could set your watch to it that I wasn't coming back to the hotel until 1:30, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And then hopping into the booth at 8 o'clock the next morning with red eyes and breath mints and trying to conduct business. Yeah. And so one of the really, really cool things that came out of my life change that I went through from an industry standpoint is that there was an organization there called Target the Heart, and they put on a prayer breakfast every year at the ATA show. And I think I went 3 different times. And so the second year that I went, I met a guy by the name of Brad Clay. Brad's got Final Descent Outdoors. He's out of Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. Awesome guy. He's a speaker. He's got he's a pastor. He does a lot of good stuff. He's got an outdoor show. But he and I got connected, and I shared my testimony with him, and he wanted me to speak at the prayer breakfast the following year. And so fast forward to, I think it was October, I was driving out to my farm, and I got a phone call from Howard Tripp. Howard used to own Real Avid. It's a gun accessory company with his wife, and his phone number came up just as I was pulling into my farm, and that would have been October of 2019. It was just a few months after my dad passed away, and I let it go to voicemail because, one, I wanted to get into my blind, but I knew what he was calling for, and my instant reaction was, no, I don't want to do it. And that was on a Friday night, and I remember sending his wife an email on Sunday, very polite email. Hey, I got Howard's voicemail. Appreciate the opportunity to speak at the prayer breakfast, but I made up every excuse under the sun why I didn't want to do it. I was busy. My dad just passed away. I didn't feel comfortable speaking in front of that many people. All these excuses. That was Monday morning. Tuesday, I'm on my way back out to the farm, and almost the same place on the highway where the phone rang, I just felt, it wasn't an audible voice, but I just feel this nudging on my heart where God basically said, you're going to speak at that breakfast because somebody there needs to hear your message.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, who might argue with him?
Yeah.
And so I went from a hard no to a hard yes. Yeah. And so I called Howard back the following morning and told him what had happened, and he was all excited. And so Dave Blanton was going to be the main speaker. So I was hitting leadoff for Dave Blanton. And so I was rooming with my good friend who's a pastor. He's actually the one that gave me the idea to put HHA USA out for our nonprofit. And I woke up that morning because we had to be there early at like 6 or 6:30. And I mean, keep in mind, the old version of me was probably hung over and sleeping in until 7:30 to get to the show by 8. Now I'm up at 5 o'clock to do God's work. I'm in the shower and I've got nothing. My mind is completely blank. And I'm like, what am I going to say? You know, I've got to talk for 10 or 12 minutes and share my testimony. And I come out of the shower. I'm like, Leroy, I got nothing. And his words to me were like, brother, how do you think I feel every Sunday? And I'm like, wow, thanks.
Yeah.
That's encouraging.
Right.
And so long story short, I end up getting on stage and giving my testimony in front of 350 people before Dave Blanton, and a very close friend of mine that I had known in the industry for almost 20 years, who I had witnessed to a little bit. Levi Morgan had actually witnessed to him quite a bit, gave his life to Christ that morning.
Man. That's the main reason. That is the reason why you spoke. That's the main, like, that's, people can think of it as small or big, but the reality is one person. I don't do these things to reach millions of people. I don't make little stories on, Instagram that I'm feeling on my heart to get a bunch of likes and a bunch of comments. One person that needs it. And that was it, dude. That's awesome.
Well, and there was actually 2 in the room that morning, because there was another one that was a mutual friend of a friend of mine that was going through some issues with alcohol. And his buddy reached out to me and he said, hey, a friend of mine heard your testimony. Would you mind talking to him? And so I ended up, talking to him and kind of helping him through some rough times in his life just by sharing my story with him. There's so much fruit that can come out of us just being willing to put our stories out there and not being afraid to do that.
Yes, praise God. That's a lot of people are so scared of these things, and my wife actually just started a blog because she's been there's some things that happened with her when she was between 14 and 16 that she hasn't told anybody besides close family, that it's something that she's been wanting. It's been on her heart for the past 2-3 years, maybe longer. And she just been, someone needs to hear it. Someone needs to hear it. We should not be ashamed. We are saved. Someone needs to hear it. And you don't realize like that. I get messages once in a while, I'm sure you do, that are just like, I've never seen this person's name. I've never heard of this person. I've never seen likes or comments. And this person is messaging me saying, I just pulled over on the side of the road and started crying. And I'm like, dude, encouragement. It's humbling, man. It's super crazy to think of these things. But, our stories. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've got one more short one that I'll share with you and we can wrap up here. But I think you saw did you see the HHA USA video that we put out a couple months ago with David Wooten, the veteran that's got PTSD?
I might have watched a little bit of it. I think I was in the middle of doing something and clicked on it, and then I didn't have the time to continue it.
Okay, you've got to take 10 minutes today to watch that, share that with your listeners. It's and I'll give the short version of this. But David contacted me a year ago, January, through our military discount program, and through the email conversation that we had, I just felt led to have a phone conversation with him. So we talked. I find out he's a born-again Christian. His life was essentially saved by a pastor putting a bow and arrow in his hand. He was abusing his VA meds, chasing it down with a fifth of Jack every day, and basically sitting on his couch playing Call of Duty for 2 years.
Man.
He was married, had his daughter on the way, and his wife basically said, it's either all of your bad habits or us. And so he made the decision to dump all that stuff out, ended up going to church, got a bow put in his hand. It saved his life, and he ended ultimately getting saved.
That's awesome.
But his PTSD resulted from him. He was injured when he was in combat, and he was home rehabbing. 7 of his buddies died at once.
Golly.
So he's got PTSD. He's got survivor's guilt. Just a lot of stuff. And so on that video, David shares that whole story, and then I share my story, kind of my heart for veterans on the back end.
That's great.
And ironically, our faith is what brought us together. The bridge in between his story and mine in the video is a Bible verse, and it's Galatians 2:20 that basically says it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me.
Right.
And with that 22 a day, the 22 veterans a day that commit suicide, Galatians 2:20 is just a coincidence that's the verse that God chose for us to use in this film.
Yeah.
So
no coincidences there. That's God.
No.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So we're gonna put out another 3 or 4 films like this year. The next one will be coming out the weekend leading up to National Law Enforcement Week with another good friend of mine that's a Christian that
awesome.
I won't spoil his story, but I say all this to tell you that shortly after we filmed this last May, the filmmaker who lives down by Milwaukee texted me one morning, and he said, "Hey, he's like, you got to give me a call. I think I got to talk to you about something." And long story short, one of his friends that was in the service outed his PTSD on Facebook. Sam had no idea, and he's like, I need you to call him.
Yeah.
And I was like,
wow.
Okay, how can I help? I'm not a trained professional. I'm not a counselor. What do you want me to do?
Right.
Not that I was not wanting to help, but I was a little scared of doing it. And he said, well, this gentleman's going through some issues, and he's been battling alcohol. And so Sam knew my story.
Yep.
And so he had he had both myself and David called and talked to this gentleman that morning. And that gentleman, I haven't met him yet. I'm going to meet him here in another month at one of our archery shoots. But he credits those conversations that morning with saving his life.
That's amazing, man. That's wild.
And that's not me. I take no credit for that other than saying, yes, I'll do it. I'll make the call. That was the only role that I played in, and I didn't really know what I was going to say. I hung up the phone with Sam, and I prayed. Right. God, give me the words to help this man. I don't know what to say to him, but you know what those words are. So please give me those. And and that prayer was answered. So
yeah, that's something big that I want just our listeners to know, on top of all of our followers, on top of people that don't know us, or anybody that isn't a Christian or doesn't. We're not here to point me. We are here through the Spirit of the Lord to give His word and be the light. All we are is just a mere messenger for God and for His kingdom, to let people know that it is not too late. We are here for you. 99% of the time we don't know what to say, but that's where prayers come in. Praying that, Lord, please give me the words to say and the words to speak and the mind to be open and fill our minds with this. We're not here to put light onto us. We're here to be the light for God, for the ones that feel that they don't have, any hope in their lives. So I just want everybody to be 100% clear on those things when it comes to, Christianity, and when it comes to, like folks like us, Chris and I, that didn't grow up in this 100% pure Christian form and never did anything bad. This is true human beings that if you talk to any friends that have known us our whole lives, I guarantee Chris can agree with me. I've had numerous guys that I grew up with in Michigan that have called me and been like, dude, how did you do it? And I'm like, how did I do what? You're a completely different person. You haven't sworn, you haven't done this and that. I'm like, I don't know. It's 100% God. And it's for someone that isn't a Christian to hear it's 100% God, they like to laugh at that. But the reality is when we are sitting here speechless on how our lives are nowadays, 100% God. So it's
absolutely, amen, brother. Amen.
It's wild.
No, and it's not like I'm some religious kook that's standing out, in front of Walmart with a robe and sandals on and hitting people upside the head with the Bible. That's not how that's not how I share my faith. I share my faith through my story.
Yeah, 100% through our story.
Our testimonies are our stories. If we're advertising for Jesus, if that's what you want to call it, that's how we're doing it. It's through my story. It's who I was and who I am today, and that the only way to explain that is God. There's no other conversion for it, because unfortunately we are human beings. We're of the flesh. We don't have that capability within us to make those radical life changes. I don't care
exactly
therapy. I don't care what you want to push on me. At some point it is going to fail if you don't have faith.
Yep 100%, man. Well, we're at about an hour and a half. This was super good, and to think that we're not even done yet. Like this could keep going. So we're gonna plan another.
I'm gonna throw out an idea.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say you and your wife come up this summer for an HHA USA event, and then let's do a part 2 so that your listeners can hear your take on the experience of what it was like to come to one of our shoots, and we'll do part 2 and
that'd be awesome.
When shoot season is over before hunting season starts. How's that sound?
That'd be sweet. We could even do, if we're in person, man, we can throw the cameras on too, and we could do a video version of it so people can kind of get that, that feel. That'd be sweet. That'd be really good.
That would be awesome. We've got 6 dates to choose from. So
okay.
I'm going to throw out a shameless plug for our nonprofit. If anybody wants to come up to Wisconsin and shoot some bows and arrows and support our veterans and our first responders, that whole schedule is on, it's on our social pages, on our Instagram, our Facebook, and on HHAUSA.org. So
there you go.
We kick off here in about 6 weeks. And we've got 6 shoots across Wisconsin going until the end of August. So it's a lot of fun and just a lot of good fellowship, and God is doing great stuff through our mission. So.
Amen. All right, brother. I appreciate you so much, guys. HHAsports.com, HHAUSA.org. Chris Hamm, man, I think one of the most genuine, great guys I've with a similar testimony to me that I have met in the industry so far, and it doesn't get much better than this. This is 100% pure. I have no notes. The only notes I have, I can tell you guys honestly, the only notes I have is his websites to the 2 and his 2 Instagram handles. And that's it. I have no notes. This is 100%, the spirit coming through us, just coming at you with raw, unashamed testimony. So I appreciate you guys. Chris Hamm, I appreciate you, man. I'll talk to you a little bit later. I'll give you a call and we'll talk a little bit. And y'all stay tuned for some of the videos that we have coming out on our YouTube channel, Bearded Outdoors USA. I have some HHA products video that I have coming out, and just stay tuned. We appreciate you guys. Thank you, Chris, so much. God bless, man.
Pleasure to be here. Looking forward to doing it again.
All right. See ya.
You bet.
Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Please share with one friend right now who you feel needs to be inspired or who you feel could really use our messages in their day. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.